It's nice to see some people in the room. I didn't know how many people would turn up to this. Um, so yeah, this presentation, you can see the title there. It's really focusing on infrastructure projects, and it's quite basic stuff. I went to Nathan's infrastructure presentation yesterday. Obviously, that was a live project, and his workflows are very complex. A lot of sort of outside workflows outside of Revizto. What I'm trying to show today is the opposite of that, really. And again, as I say, it's pretty basic stuff, but hopefully for people who are interested in working in that space, you'll learn something useful today. So my name's Peter. Work as part of the implementation team. Okay, so a bit about myself. I've got 2 degrees. Not going to bore you with the reason behind that. My second degree is relevant to the job that I'm doing now, so that was in architectural technology. I've got 20 years experience in the industry. Started off building houses, basically. So I bought a piece of land with my twin brother, and we built our first house. Built it in 9 months. Had never done it before. Did most of it ourselves, and then we carried on and we built a few more. And we also went and acted as builders, basically, with the experience that we had from the property development. We basically were management contractors. I then moved into architectural practice. So when I did my architectural technology degree, I started working for architects, worked for a number of practices, did that for 5 years, then realised that general contractors pay you more for that sort of work. So I went to work for Skanska, did that for 4 years, again, BIM management, design management, and I've been with Revizto now for 4 years. So I look after predominantly designers, architects, structural engineers, civil engineers, and I cover the EMEA region. So I'm lucky enough to work on some, fantastic projects from the UK, Europe, anyone that speaks English, that is. The French do speak English, but they refuse to speak English. So you need to be French speaking to sort of manage that region. Since I started 4 years ago, the company's grown and the dynamics are shifting in terms of who's looking after what. We've now got someone in the Middle East on the ground. So, some of those people that I look after will be handed over to Ahmed, who's started recently. This is my family and my life. I'm married, got 2 daughters. The one with the school uniforms is quite old, but it's very cute, so I thought I'd include that. That's my youngest daughter's first day at school. I've already mentioned, I've got a twin brother called Paul, identical twin, and I also have a dog, German Shepherd, called Ada. That's me and my wife in Paris on the right. Okay, so we have an agenda. I've called this Planes, Trains and Automobiles, just tried to make it fun. The planes part is slightly spurious. However, joking aside, there are serious use cases for airports and runways specifically for what I'm going to talk about. We'll look at infrastructure versus building projects, just talk about the differences between the 2 types of project. We're going to look at stamps and just how stamps, are different for the infrastructure space. Alignment models, so the term alignment is used, or there are different terms for that thing around the world. So we call it chainage, but it's basically the sort of, alignment models, I think, is fairly self-explanatory. We're going to look at zones as well, search sets, clash detection, location tags and reporting. So location tags are basically the intelligent location information that you can use for various things inside of Revizto. QR codes and custom statuses. I literally added this on yesterday. It is brand new, obviously not even released yet, but I think it's going to be really useful for large projects especially. And then I'm going to run through a few tips on how to deal with large scale projects, and then it'll be a live demo and Q&A. So again, a bit of fun with the setup in an infrastructure project. If you don't do things properly, you don't spend time putting those things in, you're just going to have a hard time. If you do spend that time and just think about it a little bit, put a little bit of effort in at the beginning, and you're talking a few hours, no more. For projects of the sort of typical infrastructure projects will last quite a long time, not many years. So it's certainly worth the time up front invested. So here are a few projects. As I say, I'm going to just talk about the differences between the infrastructure versus buildings. But it is worth mentioning there are lots of projects, Middle East mainly really, that are going to have all this stuff. You're going to have an airport inside a town, and you're going to have everything together. But commonly, typically, the Revizto projects, apart from those really big ones, it's an infrastructure project or it's a building or a bunch of buildings. So planes, basically runways, as I said. It's very difficult for me to find actual images that I could share. So these are just generic images for an airport, and it's the same for rail and roads. For some reason, in the infrastructure space, they're very sort of cagey about allowing you to share too much information, probably because they're government contracts and things like that. Yeah, so as I said, trains, railways essentially, and then automobiles, roads. That is actually a project that was carried out in Revizto. It's a road in Scotland. That's all you need to know. That's one of my clients. Do a lot of infrastructure projects, and I've worked with them quite closely over the years, and that's one of theirs. So buildings, again, I'm not going to talk too much about buildings, but just for the comparison and to get some actual sort of Revizto projects in here. The first one, Tall Commercial, that's actually the City of London. For those of you who don't know, the City of London is a financial district in London. It's also called the Square Mile. That's where you have the Bank of England and lots of very important and historic buildings. And those high rises there, that's happened within the last sort of 10, 20 years. They like to have nicknames for these buildings: the walkie-talkie building, the cheese grater, the scalpel, the sort of list goes on. And on the right-hand side of that image, that's actually the Shard, which is the tallest building. I'm not sure if it's in Europe. It was at the time, I think. But anyway, then we've got hospitals. They're generally wide, sort of flat buildings. This is actually a hospital that's being built at the moment in Denmark. These guys are going to allow us to use this as a data set to demo and stuff, which is really cool. I think it's the nicest hospital I've seen. The design of it looks like more like an Apple sort of building rather than a hospital. And then stadiums, that's another Revizto project. That's the Buffalo Bills Stadium in New York. So it's worth also just covering the fact that I'm talking about infrastructure as I've described, but there are other types of infrastructure projects. Obviously, you have energy, renewables, power plants, oil and gas. Not really infrastructure. That's their own sector, but it's still in the same sort of space. They overlap. And water and distribution, wastewater, that's another type of infrastructure project. So the main differences in terms of the Revizto information with building projects and infrastructure is the buildings have rooms. They have useful levels, obviously, that you can actually utilise. Infrastructure projects don't have, you don't have rooms on a road, and if they do have some levels, they're not really very useful because obviously the ground's going up and down. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too long on this. It's pretty sort of self-explanatory and fairly obvious. But stamps for infrastructure projects, you're going to have different information, different sort of trades. So you've got some examples of the categories there, which again differ from the buildings projects. So it's important, to consider how you're going to create your stamps and what disciplines you're going to be using them for, etc. Okay, so one of the issues with infrastructure projects is the fact that in order to get grids to work in Revizto, they're basically relying on RevUP grids. So alignment models aren't produced natively in RevUP. You're going to have Civil 3D quite typically, and Open Roads, the Bentley tool, where they will create those models, those alignment models in those softwares. So you need to somehow get that into Revizto, and the only way to do it currently is to bring that Civil 3D model into RevUP and trace over the top of it, basically, using RevUP grids, and then you export that RevUP grids model into Revizto. Here are some shots of alignment models in Revizto. I mean, again, it speaks for itself. There's some images here of the grids in the map tool. You can see them sort of above you if you're going down the road. Again, that slide is pretty self-explanatory, but it's useful to actually see what they look like in Revizto. So the other thing you are going to want to do is create zones in your infrastructure projects. That QR code, that's a link to our help center. There's a video there which runs you through this process if anyone's interested in that. But essentially, in order to get the grids working in Revizto, you need to create an extrusion of some description in Revit, which represents the zone or space. And I just use generic models. You want to make sure that you've got the naming of those zones needs to be in such a way that you can use that data once you bring that into Revizto. There is a process to get, once you export the zones, that is, into the zones modeling into Revizto, there's a small sort of an admin task to actually get those working in Visible. I'll show you, I'll point that out when we go into the live demo. But essentially what you're doing is creating a search set which ties those zones together, and then just sort of setting it up in project properties. Zones, that they can overlap as well. On some of the building projects that I've seen, like for hospitals, for example, that they'll have a lot of zones in the ceiling void and all the rest of it. So the way that you divide your project up, obviously, is entirely up to you. You can have as many zones and split them up in as many ways as you want. So search sets, with most building projects, I say most, I think Revit is typically the most commonly used platform which people design things in and model things in. You don't really see that in infrastructure projects. Well, I say you don't really see that. You won't model a road or anything of any sort of size in Revit. So they use different authoring tools. I mentioned already AutoCAD and the Bentley versions of that, essentially. So with a buildings project, you can use the RevUP category, and it's quite robust. That's quite a good property to use for that type of project. But with the civil stuff, you need to think about what properties you're going to be using to generate those search sets. This, what we're seeing here is an example of one of these highways projects in the UK. They use a CAD standard. It's pretty pointless me telling you the name of that standard, but it's basically a standard which is issued by highways authorities in the UK. And there's a CAD standard and essentially a layer naming convention, which when they create the models, they need to correctly name, and put that layer information to identify what object it is. And that's what this example is using to generate those search sets. So I'm not sure how much you can see that. Yeah, you can see most of the detail on that screen. So with the find objects in that area, there's two property conditions, looking for something or something. So when I was setting up highways projects with some of my clients, even though they were trying to follow a standard, they might have, some people using like an older version of that CAD standard. So, you can say this or this or this, and it'll just pick everything up for that element. Just seeing how I'm doing for time. So another sort of standard you can use is something called Uniclass. I don't think it's really used very much in America, but it's a standard that was created by UK companies, and it's a really good naming convention actually. The tables are free to utilize, and essentially you have a code for every single conceivable thing within the built environment. So you have sort of high level codes for spaces, and it just goes down and down and down. And there's like hundreds, if not, well, there'll be thousands of codes. And this is just an example of what that looks like here with the search sets. And interestingly, some of our Middle East clients are using this as their like CAD naming convention, essentially. So the other standards, I asked internally, globally, what standards are being used for infrastructure projects. In the USA, the National CAD standard is used, and you also have a Federal Highway Administration standard. In Australia, again, just what I've been told, the IFC properties are being used quite typically for infrastructure projects. And they also will have a level of information requirements can be specified at state level, apparently. Clash detection for infrastructure projects is obviously going to be, it's going to look slightly differently. I'll open a clash test when I do the live demo, but the clash matrices, they're going to vary. I haven't really come across maybe a typical clash matrix for highways. I know Jason Harden's been talking a lot about this clash matrix that he's produced and is going to make available for our clients. We're certainly going to look at doing something similar for infrastructure projects, highways, roads projects as well. Okay, so location tags and reporting, as I mentioned, this is just what they look like. So you have a grid intersection. So for those of you, I'm sure everyone knows this, but I'll mention it anyway. When you have these things set up, so the grids and the zones, when an issue is created or a clash issue is created, Revizto knows where that issue lives, basically. So the location data is automatically pulled from that. It's not a manual process, and it's massively powerful, not just to filter all of your issues according to which grid it might be on,
but it also then will feed into dashboarding and reporting, and also for clash detection, the grouping tools. You don't have, again, useful information, rooms, etc., as I've already mentioned. That just doesn't exist. So by having these things set up, you can group your clashes by those parameters, essentially. QR codes and custom statuses. I think most of you know this is due to be released in April time with 5.14. So it really opens up, I think, quite an interesting workflow where on an infrastructure project, somebody's out on site. Some of these projects are, many miles long and wide, and it's going to be very difficult to pull up your model on your phone and figure out where you are. So with the QR code, you can generate a QR code either from an object or in this case, as I've demonstrated there, you can generate a QR code from an issue. So in this sort of example workflow, if I've imagined a scenario where the pile caps need to be checked once they've been installed for quality, so you can easily create a search set for those pile caps. You can easily create create multiple issues, which for each of those pile caps essentially in one hit. You can then generate a QR code from those issues, print that off, take it out on site, and then underneath there on the bottom right hand corner, there's a very, very simple but just an example issue for using the custom statuses. So you've got statuses there ready to inspect, passed or failed. Obviously, they don't exist, they're not standard statuses, they've been created. So dealing with large infrastructure projects, these are really just some tips to manage information of that scale. Viewpoints, again, these things are really obvious, but they are powerful at the same time. So if you can get your BIM manager or whoever to set these up, the guys on site will then just consume this information, click on the viewpoint on their phone or iPad, and it takes you to that place. Preferences, again, this is really basic stuff, but you can adjust the quality of the model, and there's some other sort of bits in there which you can adjust if you're struggling to actually view the information on your device. Load unload links as well is really useful. There is an actual limitation to the number of models that a device can open. So I'm going to explain this. If you've got questions, I'll try and explain it again. But I explained what I'm about to explain to a guy 5 times, and he still didn't get it. So, with an iOS device, it can open 2,500 things. With an Android device, it can open 1,000 things. And a thing is basically a model or a scene. So in terms of Revizto terminology, a scene is the file that was used to export information from, and a model is the thing that sits underneath that. So a scene is 4 things, and a model is 1 thing. So if you have one model with, say a Civil 3D pavements model was exported, that would equal 5 things because you've got the scene is 4 and the model is 1. So with some of these massive giga projects, there are more than the number of things that the devices can handle, but there's a very easy way to go around that, and that's just to load the number of things that device can handle, and that solves it. Last hope optimization. If I'm being honest, I don't really know what that does, but if everything else fails, you can try and click that button and see if that will allow you to view the information. Okay, so I'm going to give you a live demo here. I've got 2 sessions open. Okay, yeah, so this is really just a project with loads of random stuff thrown in just for demonstration purposes. So I'm just going to show you, what this is made up of. So in here we've got Civil 3D models, we've got MicroStation, SketchUp, there's a structural Revit model, we've got loads of IFCs in there. So yeah, it's quite a nice example of the amount of different file types you can get into a project. I'm going to look at viewpoints here, so I mentioned that. So again, self-explanatory, but you can use these viewpoints out on site, which is just going to make people's lives easier when they're navigating. There's also a viewpoint that I've got here. It's called Road 200 kilometers away. So if I click on this model is 200 kilometers away from the rest of it. So you can see how quickly you can actually get to something which is quite far away. There aren't that many projects that I'm working on where something's 200 kilometers long, but yeah, it's only a matter of time before people want to see that information. And again, just a caveat that if you've got something which is very, very long and you've got lots and lots of information in there, you are probably going to struggle to navigate around something which is absolutely massive. In terms of limitations of scale within Revizto, I spoke to our sort of head developer, and he said there is no theoretical limit to how big a Revizto project can be. The limitation comes down to the device, the hardware that people are using to view that information. I'm going to show you the zones and what they look like. So if I get my search sets up. So I've selected my zones. You can't see them. The only way to see them is if I isolate transparency. So when you bring the zones in, you bring them in, you create a search set which ties the zones together. You then go up here, project properties, select the search set that you want to use for the zones. And then when you do that, if I just go to the home view, they basically disappear. But they are still there. So just create an issue. I think there's a zone in there somewhere. It doesn't matter what type of stamp I use. So yeah, so I've just created that issue, and you can see, Revizto knows where it is, including which zone it's in, and you can very easily filter. If I filter all of my issues, 837, and then click on that piece of metadata, you can see it's automatically filtered at everything that's in zone 3. Clash detection. Actually, I'll do appearance profiles first. Appearance profiles, again, nothing sort of too flashy or new about this, but appearance profiles, just like in building projects, can be really useful to use for coordination. Phases, etc. Again, that's fairly self-explanatory. So it's a very, very simple clash test. And even though I've sort of banged on about the best way or the correct way to set up your search sets, it's just because of the data that's in here, it's that terrible. I've had to sort of fudge stuff and try and make things work, but that's just because of the information I've got to hand. So if I open this clash test, so I've grouped the clash test, the results by zone, and then by the grid intersection. I've also changed some of the colours in there. I'm sure most of you, well, I don't know, who in this room knows much about the details of this stuff, but I like to change the clashing colours of my objects. Yeah, and you can do that in here. Okay, I'm going to open this one now, which is, it's actually a real project. This is the only, or one of the very few projects that we were given permission to use by the client. So we've, the client is Bain, Denmark, which is the national rail carrier for Denmark. This is a rail station, Favholm, I think, if I've pronounced that correctly, station. Can't see any car park down here. They obviously like their green transport in Denmark. But yeah, let's have a look to see what else is in here. This project is made up of Bentley tools or information that's been authored in Bentley products. There's also an FBX file in here, so that's actually quite nice for infrastructure projects to bring this in for context. So it's quite a straightforward exercise to open InfraWorks, create a 3D model and export an FBX mesh file, and then you can bring that into Revizto. Yeah, and it's just a nice way to bring that information in. Got some viewpoints in here, so again, so this isn't a particularly sort of large project by any means. But you can see, you know, the fact that there's, you know, almost 4 kilometers across there. Revizto just handles all of that really nicely, really well. And even on your phone, I can open this up on my phone with no problem at all for this project. We've got point clouds in here as well. So point clouds are obviously a very useful thing to have in all projects, but I think especially in the infrastructure space, often the point clouds will be collected by UAV, unmanned aerial vehicles, or they'll have more specific point clouds for certain areas. Yeah, I think, to be honest, that's pretty much all I need to show you. I didn't actually run through this, so I wasn't sure how I was going to be doing for time, but I think we have time for questions though. So yeah, I'll open the floor out to questions. Yes.
Yeah, I have actually 2 questions. One is, I guess, around common origin point for bringing in the various information. So the civil 3D information plus the individual, say, building models, and then also looking at the InfraWorks context. How, any tips or suggestions on how to do that?
Yeah, not really, to be honest. Everything wants to be coordinated outside of Revizto. Ideally, you can move stuff around in Revizto, but it's quite clunky. So, yeah, I don't really. I probably can't give you any more information than that, unfortunately.
Projects typically have a common shared coordinate point at all the various modeling.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so. My background is in with buildings. I don't have industry sort of experience with working with civil 3D, for example. So my knowledge is being completely honest, sort of limited in terms of how they actually coordinate these things. But I do know that they do coordinate them. So very often RevUP files will be used with civil 3D files, and that's quite a typical data set for a lot of the highways projects that I look after. So there is definitely a way to make sure that the information is coordinated. Ian Harding behind you might be able to give you some more information in terms of how you do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
In relation to grids and Bentley-based products.
Yeah.
Setting up the grids in Revit is a solution, but with the Bentley Open Buildings Update 10, I think we can export out the grids to a 2D file basically.
Yeah.
So will that be an option for pushing out the grids from OBD to Revizto?
Yeah, so at the moment, there's no automated way to do that. The only way to do it is the workflow I described. But that does lead me quite nicely on to mentioning that we are working on infrastructure improvements. And I was going to do a slide, but I decided against it because it's very much being developed right now and it's in the design sort of phase. So we don't, until it's actually been released, we don't know what problems we're going to come across. And I think initially it was deemed to be quite straightforward, but the more they started looking into it, they come across potential issues. But I'm hopeful and that they will finish that development. And what they will do, the intention is to do exactly what you're describing, to bring that file into Revizto directly, that native file, and then setting up the grids with lots of different options, with major grids, minor grids. What I haven't shown what the grids look like. Let me just get a viewpoint up here. So with the levels, you want to probably bring at least one level in, so you can, when you turn the grids on, like I'm about to do, you can fix it to a level. But what you're seeing there is a very sort of straightforward grid or alignment model where you've got two carriageways, a central reservation. So you've got northbound carriageway, central reservation, southbound carriageway, and then you've got those stations. So I would classify that as a major grids sort of system, but you will have certainly a lot more grids within projects. So I was talking to Nathan yesterday, who obviously has experience on working on live projects, and you'll have pipes and other parts of infrastructure which will have their own grids. So this feature development is trying to take all of that into account, and it's quite. I mean, when Anton, one of our lead developers, when we come to him and his team with a feature request, he sits down within a few days. He's taught himself everything there is to know about the industry sort of standards, and then he comes back with this solution. It's incredible. So it's looking really promising that when in terms of what I've seen today with where they've got with it. The other thing they're going to do as part of that feature is look at how you can navigate, move around basically a project for. So if I just come down here, so obviously I'm in a slow. I need to go to my preferences and speed this up, but at the moment, that's the way you move around an infrastructure project. You're just pressing W on your keyboard and moving the mouse around in terms of where you want to go. But with the development that they're looking at, we're going to look at trying to stick to an alignment itself. So you'll be able to sit on one of those northbound, say for example, carriageway grid line and just follow it round. They're even talking about putting a little car in front of you and stuff like that. But yeah, that's another part of this development, as well as the ability to automatically cut sections on the stations themselves. So there's lots of really cool stuff which I can't, give you any sort of concrete information on. I think the other day Jason gave that sort of caveat, legal get out of jail sort of thing, where everything we're talking about in terms of development, it's not written in stone until it's released, essentially. But yeah, I'm hopeful that they're going to do this stuff and do it well, and hopefully this year we'll see that.
One question. It is possible, or maybe it is in the roadmap to do a section perpendicular to the line.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I've just been talking about. That is definitely one of the things that they are looking at including is when they release these infrastructure improvements. So yes.
Okay, but it is not another question. So
that's okay.
Not only to do the section. It is. Are you thinking to integrate something like we have in authoring tools? We have a Y and X to verify the slopes, etc. in the section.
I'm not sure if I understand that. Are you saying that you want to like put some?
Well, one of the things that we want to analyze in these sections is with the slopes of at the end of the road,
yeah,
correct or not, and these kind of things we are doing in iGreen and other kind of software. I don't know if you are looking for something like that.
Yeah, so you can already measure the slopes of roads and things with that tool.
We cannot adjust the coordinate system to be localized. I think this is what they're saying. We would need a localized coordinate systems to that section, so we could pull out measurements. Right now, if you pull in XYZ measurements, it's in regards to your geolocation, absolute north and east, west type of thing. Yeah. So that doesn't help you for that cross section of the road. Is that what you're saying?
This is true.
Yeah. What I suggest is I'll give you my email address, and if you email me, we can certainly get into the detail of what you're wanting, and I can speak to the guys and see if we can include that in the development. So, that's exactly the sort of feedback and conversations that we like to. It's one of the purposes of this event, right? So, yeah, we can certainly talk about that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, as part of the question, I think when you actually cut a section, we need to then pull measurements when you're in the section tool. And I can't remember if you can currently do that or then that's something where you're going to measure a slope or yeah.
I think they look for localized. You're looking to set up your own little datum.
Yeah, we have no way.
Right? You don't want to use the site datum for the
You can
for
mark
kilometers. You want to use a local datum.
Okay. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that is on the roadmap is switching between the different coordinate systems. I'm pretty sure that's there. But again, if anybody wants to look at specific developments and improvements like that, feel free to email myself and I'll talk to the developers. That's sort of part of our role. My team is to talk to the clients and then be that sort of bridge between yourselves and the development team. So yeah. Okay, I think we are out of time. So thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed that.